What up, nerds, and welcome to a very special episode of Straight Chilling. We're bringing you guys some more film festival coverage on this episode. We're talking about the Chattanooga Film Festival, celebrating their 10-year anniversary this year. Before we dive deep into all the movies that we were able to see, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got your boy Randy. What's up, man?
For this theater is an American institution.
How we doing?
I am doing quite well, ready to talk about a shitload of movies yet again.
Oh my God. We have crammed so many fucking films into our eyeballs.
It's
between
true.
This festival and others. Oh my God. I feel like I'm the most cultured swine of all.
You are a very well-watched swine, indeed.
Thanks, man.
Last but not least, calling in from Seoul, South Korea, we got your boy Soju. What's up, man?
Oh, what up? It's your boy Soju. Boys, let's discuss some film.
Films.
Put on your smoking jackets and grab your pipes and let's discuss film.
If your jacket's not smoking, if you're not smoking, everything must be smoking.
It needs to be on fire, please.
These movies.
I only wear pants made of tobacco leaves.
Damn. Just absorb right into the skin.
Really uncomfortable. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, well, you do what you gotta.
You do what you gotta do. Yeah, Chattanooga Film Festival celebrating their 10-year anniversary. This year, it was being held at the Reed House. That was like the host hotel. We were unable to be there in person. We were really hoping to make it happen, but it fell on a weekend where like we all had shit going on. But I was looking at pictures of the Reed House. It's apparently a very old haunted hotel, and it definitely, like, the interior of it did give me like the Overlook Hotel kind of vibes, with like these big grand rooms with chandeliers, and like it looked really badass. So I'm sure everybody that was there had a great time. Yeah. Next year we'll be there in person.
Take those first class free ticks.
I'm sure we'll be doing our own little, conference there.
Most likely.
Oh yeah,
we'll have our own room for the whole event, and
we'll be performing our own Q&A for on the main stage, of course.
It'll be part Rager, part Q&A. It'll be, you've never seen anything like it before.
Be swinging from those grand chandeliers, I'm sure.
Like nothing I'd ever smelled before in my life.
Hell yeah. But the Chattanooga Film Festival did host a large portion of its movies online, so we were able to watch a lot of these virtually. I think they had about 40 feature-length films on there, and they had probably twice as many shorts. We watched as many as we could within the allotted time, and we're going to get to those for you right now. So we all watched kind of different stuff. I think the only movie that we all watched was Satan Wants You.
Satan Wants You.
You want to get into Satan Wants You a little bit here, Juice?
The devil's a motherfucking liar. So you know I ain't worried. Biatch.
Yeah, I'll start this one off, but I feel like this hits a little closer to Randy's heart, so I won't take up too much time. But this is a documentary, so it's not like a fictional film or anything, but it's set up as a documentary, and it's about this woman and her psychiatrist who wrote this book, which essentially recalled her repressed memories that as a child she was taken by a cult that worshiped Satan for like a year and a half, and cut her up and did all this like crazy shit, and it sparked this nationwide panic that they were showing footage from them on like Oprah and shit, and talking to the police and making these like investigation protocols about cults and Satan worship and sacrificial like babies and shit. It was wild to kind of put it in context. I feel like it's something that we lived through and grew up on the very edge of like our society and like our cultural experience in the late 80s. But I never really understood it from the context that this film put it in. And it was like very interesting to see it in that context.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Like this is, I would say I was expecting more of an indictment of a documentary, an indictment of the behavior or whatever. This movie is a lot more even-handed than I gave it credit for from the trailer. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's in any way apologetics for anything,
No.
but it's still pretty damning just because the facts is kind of how I see it. But yeah, like the thing that I had kind of like taken for granted is like, this is obviously a very stupid thing that people got moral panicked about. Moral panics still happen around one thing or another. They can be very dangerous, certainly for out groups and things like that. And my experience with the satanic panic was a little more firsthand, at least for me, because like you're right. Like it was kind of like the beginning of my life was the tail end of that experience for Americans. But at the same time, I was in a Southern Baptist church growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So like I got to see some of that stuff, but I didn't know at the time how unusual it was until years later when I saw all these videos as an adult of like police training videos and all that stuff. And then to watch this documentary, it was a little more enlightening to the idea of like, okay, I can kind of see how even moderately reasonable people might have been like cowed by
worried
this because
yeah,
because the media whipped up a frenzy about it. This was not entirely on the backs of lunatics. It was lunatics with a very broad microphone. And I think that's kind of that's an allegory that I see playing out, that I think we all see playing out in modern society pretty much daily. So I don't know. It kind of put things into a new perspective for me in that way.
Yeah, this was super interesting. I didn't realize this was going to focus on this autobiographical book that came out called Michelle Remembers. I never heard of this book, but this documentary really does posit that like it was the kickstart of the satanic panic, and it really like dives deep into this woman Michelle and the relationship that she had with her therapist and how they co-wrote this book together. And after they, were all over the TV, all over the news, they became like, celebrities basically. All of a sudden these other folks and their therapists started having the same kind of thing happen, and like other like experiences similar to Michelle's allegedly started popping up. And then all of a sudden, oh, this has happened to hundreds or thousands of kids and it's still happening today and they're eating babies, and it just sort of evolved and spiraled out of control.
And it's all evidence free.
I know.
There was that one of the woman who like was working at a daycare.
Yeah.
And just people thought there were some kind of rituals going on. It's like, what are you
ruining people's lives?
She went to jail.
Yeah.
No, she's not the only one.
Yeah. You imagine the cleanup on something like that? Like you're just going to go pick up your kids regular one day. There's not a scratch on them. And you're just going to get it in your head that they have been part of some kind of worship. Like, what are you talking about?
An essential part of the belief that this is real requires you to believe that wounds and scars magically disappeared once these people were saved by Christianity. Like that's truly madness that got people locked up.
Jesus. Yeah.
The Michelle, the like sort of focus of this documentary, she ended up marrying her therapist. Like they were both married.
Dude, that show's fucked up.
They were both
that is super fucked up.
Married independently of one another, and then she started going to these therapy sessions, and then they had a relationship spark, got divorced, and then married one another. So it's like clearly just a fucked up situation all around. But it's the documentary is super interesting, and I think really well made. And probably the most interesting thing about it is they have all of these sessions that she did with the therapist were recorded. The audio was.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of that in the documentary.
Like the Nixon tapes. Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like one interesting thing to think about, and thinking about how they got together or whatever, that I just ruminated on after watching the movie was, I wonder how many American couples or affairs have had as much horrible impact as this couple did. Like there's probably been a few, but not that many. Like,
I was thinking too, like everything surrounding this. I mean, this is a time when you didn't have phones, when you didn't have any kind of like social media or anything like that. So through a couple different facets, one of people just like, if you see this on Oprah and fucking Maury and shit and on the news and the FBI is creating protocols for this, then okay, as a normal human being, you might be like, okay, there's something to this. But even it was interesting how they showed those tapes and explained the breakdown, because what it really seemed like was, okay, this woman was into this dude and as a result, clearly was like finding ways to spend more time with him. So I'm just going to go to more and more clients. So she had to generate this thing.
He felt like
and he was clear
in a room.
And he was just clearly a guy who was interested in finding something special to make him special, to make him stand out. And so it's this toxic feed where it's like, oh, well, I want to spend time with you and you're going to lay with me with my shirt off on the ground as long as I like, keep feeding you these stories. And he's just going to be like, well, why would anybody make this up? Of course, I'm doing like groundbreaking work and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that done. It's like, oh my God.
We I know we could talk about this so much more, but we have so many movies to touch on. Anyway, Satan Wants You is the name of the documentary. Check it out if you get a chance. I think we all really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Randy, you want to grab a title and start?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we start? One of the early movies that I watched was one called Mind, Body, Spirit, and that was, I think, one of the bigger films, or had one of the bigger slots in the weekend. I could be wrong about that, but I watched Mind, Body, Spirit, which is a found footage style horror film centered around a young woman named Anya who inherits her grandmother's house and is trying to find a new path, has apparently been suicidal in the past, and is trying to find a new pathway forward in this new house that she's inherited. But come to find out that grandma had some secrets, and one of them was a book that was kind of addressed to her. And so within this book, there's all these like little practices or whatever. And it just so happens that the conceit of the movie is that she's starting a yoga channel for YouTube. So it's just following the journey there. And I like this movie quite a bit. I think that it really does a good job. It's one of those found footage movies where it self-justifies the presence of the camera, and it does a pretty good job with that, I think, overall. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of a few scenes where it's like, okay, this doesn't make a ton of sense why you bring a camera down here. But for the most part, it's all pretty on the level. And also, like, I wouldn't say that it's like the best hauntings that are happening, like the most original hauntings, like the hauntings that happen, the things that you see, they kind of happen right away. And the only person that's oblivious to them is our lead character. And it kind of makes you feel a little like bad for her in like not necessarily the intended way. It's like a lot of naivety at play. And I think that's part of it, but it's also like somebody you want to think about. Oh, this is somebody who's desperate for a pathway forward out of a bad situation, or desperate to like find a sense of purpose, to find their own voice, and all this stuff, which is something that I think a lot of people relate to, certainly in the social media age, which is why that's tied in, I'm sure. But at the same time, like the actual nuts and bolts scares aren't super there for me. So I think that it was a little middling for me at times. But I think overall, I would recommend it. I think that if you like the found footage genre, you could definitely put that on your to watch list this year for sure. There's enough good stuff there to help you gloss over some of the rougher edges, I think.
Cool.
Nice. I'll jump in here with the next one. I watched a movie called Tearsucker. I think I'm the only one that watched this one. But there is a trailer out for it if you want to watch it. I don't think there's a release date yet, but I imagine it's coming fairly soon since they do have a trailer out. This movie is basically about the idea of like an evil person who drinks tears, but like taken very literally and put to film. It's definitely like a meditation on misogyny, and like the bad guy, he's like kind of a slasher, but instead of trying to murder people, he just exists to make these women cry so that he can literally drink their tears. That's like what gets him off, I guess.
Does he like, is he subsisted on that? Like can he survive without them?
He can. Yeah. He He doesn't.
Okay.
It just like seems to get him off like sexually. It doesn't.
How does he drink them? Does he like lick them off their face?
He does. Yeah, he's.
Okay.
Let me show you how
Sucks
to
them
get
off
with
your
me.
cheeks and like it's
Whoa.
a very uncomfortable thing
I am the cream.
to watch. Some like towards the beginning, like some of the scenes are like a little funny, and some it's like. I don't know.
Jesus.
I'm not totally sure if the comedy is like intentional. Some were like a little funny. Some were like super fucking creepy. Though, so, like it kind of went back and forth. I don't know. I didn't necessarily love the movie, but I could see where a person could watch this and it could be very cathartic. I imagine. But it's just a little like too. It's too base level, I guess. It just sort of never goes any deeper than just like that very simple sort of log line, like evil man drinks tears, like kind of
Okay. Yeah.
It's okay though. Tearsucker, like I said, it should be coming out relatively soon. But yeah, check out the trailer. Juice, you want to grab one?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the one that was probably my favorite. So New Religion, this was a Japanese film that came out, and it was one of the bigger ones, I think, too, that did they did like a big theatrical release for at the festival. And I really like this one. If you want like a more of my specific kind of thoughts, I did an article on it on our website, so you can check that out. But this one, I kind of described it as if Brandon Cronenberg had directed Cure, the Japanese film Cure that we covered earlier this year, because it's very trippy. It kind of dances between these two different views of like the regular world, like kind of what you see, and then this kind of night but also like psychological world where things get a lot more trippy and things like that. And there's this kind of antagonist villain guy who I found very interesting. He has had throat cancer, so he speaks through one of those things. What would they put in your throat?
The voice box things.
Yeah, but he's got it hooked up in his house to these speakers around his house. So like if you're in another room, he can speak, and it's got this very specific kind of voice, and like you can hear him. And I thought that portion of it was pretty brilliant, like smart. It really stood out to me, and it was effective. And it essentially also kind of plays with this idea of he's a photographer, and he essentially hires these call girls to come over, and he just takes pictures of them. But the idea is kind of based on the idea like a photograph kind of takes your soul or whatever. And it gets really trippy, but I thought that it was like really well done. I found the character very sympathetic. I found the story very interesting, and the journey between like the psychological trippy kind of stuff and the regular grounded, like just kind of getting through life stuff worked really well for me. I mean, this one, like apart from festivals, jumped up like really high on my list for overall horror for the year. So I was really digging this one. Bob, you watched this one as well, right?
Yeah, I did. It's really beautifully shot, and it's very well acted, and it definitely plays with like I think some pretty heavy things that most people can relate to on some level. And it's surprising. It ended up not being quite what I was expecting, but it is interesting. And yeah, I recommend checking it out too. Definitely has some Cronenberg vibes going on with it for sure. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Randy? Wait, it's my turn, isn't it? I'm already losing track.
Bob,
let me jump into another one. I watched this movie called Invoking Yell. And I think the most simple way to explain it would be Blair Witch Project meets Lords of Chaos. It's about these two girls who are in a black metal band, and they want to go out in the woods and make a music video. So it's very like handy cam, found footage, Blair Witch vibes in the woods. They get one of their friends to come along to actually film it for them. And they go out to this like abandoned bus, and it's super creepy. And they're filming scenes on the bus, and then like it starts to get later at night, and they start doing this seance thing, and it gets pretty dark and maybe a little supernatural. And I won't spoil it, but that's sort of like the setup for the movie. It's pretty successful in what it's trying to do. It's got some pretty good performances, and I love like the overall idea and like vibe of the movie. I think there might be some questionable like character choices as the movie develops, but I love the idea for a movie. I think it's pretty badass, and it's a fun one. It's a fun watch for sure. If you're like really into the Blair Witch Project specifically, I would say check this one out. It's very similar vibes to that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And as you're talking, movie pitch, here you go. That same kind of idea, but Tucker and Dale kind of spin on it, where kind of what we were just talking about, the other, where there's this group of maybe hikers in the woods and they come along and these kids are like trying to make this music video. So they got like candles or like torches burning and stuff like that. So you have this group that's like, you get to see them playing around like, oh, let's go make a music video. Ha ha ha. And they're super like fun and young and stuff like that. And then you see this other group who's scared of them from like afar, like, oh my God, are we going to get caught? That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that could be fun. You could have them both carrying their own cameras, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's start writing it right now.
We're working on it.
Yeah, nobody take that out.
Derivative movie. Here we come.
I got a director in mind.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we do. Ray and Deezy, what do you got?
Well, let's see. Where should I go here? I'll start with this one. This was kind of a low light for me personally. A film called The Haunting of Hype House. Now, we are old. We are old people.
Whoa,
I'm going to lead with that. This movie is absolutely meant for younger people than ourselves. So I cannot fault it to its extremes like I would otherwise. But yeah, let me start with what this movie's about. Okay. So this movie, I don't know if anybody doesn't know or does know or whatever, but Hype House is kind of a colloquial thing. And I think it's kind of a branded thing by, I believe, the Logan Paul contingent of internet weirdos. I want to say that's right. Anyway, long story short is it's like basically a hype house in common terms, as I understand it, is a place where a bunch of like fucking very young people live, and they just film themselves doing pranks on each other and partying and getting lit or whatever. It's basically the real world, but self-filmed, and these kids become millionaires in some cases, and we have to all deal with them. So
it's a prank, bro. What? It's a prank.
I thought to myself, you know what? This sounds like a funny idea. Like we're taking the Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of whatever house, sort of like maybe doing a spoof of that, set in a hype house. So maybe there's a lot of like humor there, and it definitely tries for that to some extent. But I think it's too immersed in that field for me. It feels like the things they're joking about are like way too specific to something that I'm not privy to. So like I was missing a lot of it. And also like the acting's pretty rough. The filming is pretty rough. The story, more than anything, it's trying something. It's a horror comedy, but it still kind of tries to have that heart. And at no point does it really feel like it sticks any of those landings for me. I think of this as sort of like an entry film for somebody. Like they're trying to get something going, and I respect that, but it's just pretty rough around the edges, and there's some like just very strange story beats that don't really add up in either a literal sense or a comedic sense for me. It's just sort of like I guess that just has happened now on screen. I don't know what to do with that information, and I don't know. It's tough to get my head around it, and I'm trying not to be too unkind because it really isn't. It's pretty clearly not for me. Literally, not for me, but it's also not made for me. So yeah, that was my experience with Haunting of Hype House. Maybe if you have a little more immersion in that world or a little more understanding of that sort of thing, you'd get more out of it. But at the end of the day, it's still a pretty amateur production that's, you know, really trying, but it's only getting so far with it.
Randy's just not hype enough. He doesn't get it.
I'm not hype. That's always been the case. That's not new.
Get hype, bro.
Just a prank, bro.
Just no.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm tired of saying that shit, dude.
There's some very weird characters in that movie where it's like some of them are like cartoon characters and some of them are like, I don't know, like teen fucking UPN drama type shit going on, WB shit. Like,
oh boy.
but for a new generation that I don't understand. So
like,
I'm old is
me.
the long and short of it.
Great. Love it. Cool. Juice, you got another one?
Yeah, so I'll cover I'll talk all the positives first. So the next one, actually, this one was really good too. Randy watched this one as well. The Last Movie Ever Made. This one, it was great. Randy actually recommended it when he was watching. He was like, I just watched this one, and I really liked it. It's a very simple premise, and it's a simple idea that's pulled off. We covered a movie earlier this year, Dave Makes a Maze, or Dave Made a Maze, whatever, that movie. And it's very similar in feels, but I had some problems with that one that this one actually overcame. So this one's very similar, and it's kind of like do-it-yourself crew is in there. They're building sets. The idea is that everybody in the whole world wakes up one day and there's a voice speaking to them that says, hey guys, you're all in a simulation. We are a higher existence than you, and we were using you as an experiment, and the experiment's coming to an end, and you have 30 days to essentially live. We're going to make it as easy as possible. We're going to like generate food for you. We're going to generate parties and shit. So try to live out your life and have it. And everybody knows this. So there's this one dude, and this one hit me in the feels pretty good, who just really hasn't done anything with his life, but he's going through his old shit, and he sees a bunch of like movies he made with his old buddies when they were in like high school or whatever. And there was this one that they never got finished. And so he's like, I'm gonna finish it like with my friends, that's how I'm going to spend my last days. And so he tries to get the old crew back together, and some of them can't do it. So he picks up some new people along the way. He's like kind of reconciles with his ex-wife and stuff like that. And it was like really well done. A simple premise that they pulled off, because you're supposed to be using goofy sets anyways. They're supposed to be like homemade sets, homemade props, and like, but honestly, in the in-between spaces where people are supposed to be delivering like regular acting and stuff, they do it well. I was very surprised, honestly, by this lead and everybody that's involved. It feels very authentic, and it's got some good feels to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Randy,
I totally agree. This I agree. Like, this is I don't know. I'm an easy mark for this one. Speaking of my own proclivities, like this is ultimately like a story about like the innate value of making something, especially with your friends and with people that have a shared goal with you, and the act of doing that and how that is its own reward in many ways. And so on that level, it hits me. This movie ends really sweetly. It's a very sweet film at the end of the day, but you wouldn't know that at the very beginning of this movie, where it starts out almost like a very silly fucking comedy. Like, I don't know. It takes a while for it to sort of lean into its core premise enough to where its characters can really get rolling. And it doesn't take a whole lot for granted. It's absurdist in that one facet, but like in terms of like, oh, we got to get all these people together. We only have this much time. Like, they are very tethered to a reality that we all are, in the way that they operate and the way that they get things done or don't get things done, and the way things go wrong, and all that shit. And some people want to do it, some people don't. Some people have moved past this in their lives, some people haven't. Like, this, I don't know, man. It speaks to sort of the breadth of being an artistically minded person who has grown up and has to make choices with their time. I think that, I don't know, it's pretty powerful in that way. And I agree, like the acting, the performances, they work both on a silly level and on a grounded level. And that's not an easy balance to strike. I would think it's kind of in the realm of like the Squid and the Whale or the Lobster or things like that, where it's like just a little quirky almost. It's absurd enough to be quirky, but it's got a real emotional weight to it. So I agree. This is one of my favorites of the festival.
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by this one.
Bummed I missed that, but maybe I'll catch it a little later during the year when it gets a wide release or something.
Yeah, I hope so.
Sounds dope. I'll jump in with another one here. This movie is called We Might Hurt Each Other. It's also known as Pensive, and it's going to be released on Screambox, I think, at the end of the month. So very soon you'll be able to watch this one. This is the first Lithuanian slasher movie ever made. So
Wow.
it's foreign language film. It's about a young group of high school kids. They just graduate from high school, actually, and they're all about to go their separate ways, go to different colleges, and they want to have sort of like one final hoorah in the form of a party. And I guess their hangout location falls through. So one of the guys, his mom's a realtor. She's trying to sell this cabin that's out in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, hey, we can go party at this cabin. Nobody lives there. I got the address. Let's do it up. So they all head that way. And they find these big wooden carvings that look like people, but they're sort of like carved in a primitive kind of style. They're very, very stylistically done. And the kids, they have a huge bonfire. One of them's a DJ, and they start spinning music. They're drinking, they're smoking weed, they're getting crazy, and then they just start like fucking these wooden sculptures up, like knocking them over, taking axes to them, burning them, just really fucking them up. And as the movie develops, you find out that was a very, very poor choice, because they mean a lot to a specific person that comes to seek revenge upon all of these kids. And it goes a little bit deeper than just like a baseline slasher movie. It works very effectively as a slasher movie. I think the slasher, when he does appear, is like fucking scary and interesting. But these kids like are really well written. They're three-dimensional, and there's a lot going on between them interpersonally. And the movie's very much about self-preservation in like every sense that you could conceive of. So it goes a little bit deeper than just like, kids getting killed in the woods. I enjoyed it. It is probably one of my favorites of the festival. Technically, everything is banging on all cylinders too. So I recommend checking it out. We Might Hurt Each Other.
Cool.
Coming soon. Yeah, Juice. No, Randy.
Who's Randy?
Randy, you got another.
Me. It's my turn. All right. I'm going to go over to one more that was a little bit of a letdown for me, but a little bit more in my wheelhouse than the previous one I mentioned, Bigfoot Trap. Now, Bigfoot, as you know, is a favorite here around the Straight Chilling household. You might recognize this. Obviously, a very resounding love of the Bigfoot character. As you can tell, we have his voice on recording there. Now,
that was a
I was excited to see
this. We did.
Yeah, of course.
Mr. Foot.
Sassy, as we call him. Anyway, so Bigfoot Trap is a film that is... Bigfoot Trap, rather, is a film where it's just like in its title. There's a couple of guys in... I want to say Tennessee woods, somewhere in that region. The Tennessee woods that hunt Bigfoot or try to find Bigfoot, not hunt, not trying to kill Bigfoot. They're respectful of Bigfoot. They're very much like the Bigfoot enthusiast types, and they are interviewed, or they bring on this guy who is our central character, who is basically like a shitty blogger. Like, he films himself interviewing kooks and quacks or whatever for his big company, and his big company flies him out to this Bigfoot trap to see what these guys have done and essentially make them look like fools. And he's conflicted about this, which is fine. Ultimately, long story short, is they start to sort of like, he starts to sympathize specifically with this one character who's really doing the bulk of showing him around his Bigfoot trap, which is literally like just a big shed that he has rigged up to capture Bigfoot. And through a series of unfortunate events, he finds himself, the interviewer that is, finds himself in the Bigfoot trap, being held captive by this man who up until then was a little bit sympathetic, but they were at odds because one of them believes in Bigfoot and the other doesn't. And the thing about this movie that kind of rubs me wrong, it's technically done well. I think that it looks okay. The Bigfoot monster doesn't look great. I'll give it, that's one ding. But like everything else about it, I think looks okay. Like the performances are fine. But it really feels like this slightly, it's trying to sort of make it, I don't know, it's trying to make a stand about not being judgmental towards people with strange and unusual beliefs, which is on its face fine. But we're talking about like flat earthers and shit. Like, I don't know. There are some caustic beliefs out there that it's okay to criticize and make light of, in my opinion. And what ultimately happens in this movie is like all the characters who kind of believe in these fringe ideas have some sort of weird trauma involved with it that kind of makes them compelled to pursue it and like unable to let it go,
move past it. Yeah.
And then like the end of the movie ends with basically, I don't know. I don't want to, this is a huge spoiler alert. So just putting that out there. It ends with the interviewer basically having a traumatic experience and then doing the same thing and like leaving his wife and home in order to live out this sort of existence of pursuing this insane fringe idea. And I can't really get behind that as an ending. Like, it's fine to not want to be like shitty to people, even if they have not want to judge people. But like, I don't know, man, it seems like these people are traumatized and they're leaning into their delusions. I don't know that that's a healthy signal to send to people.
Yeah.
That's just how I felt about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading it. I'm perfectly willing to hear another side of that, but I was not huge into the ending of this movie. I think technically it's a decent movie. It's paced well and all that stuff, but that story really left a weird taste in my mouth.
Bummer.
That's it for me.
Yeah, there are caustic beliefs. Yeah. So yeah, I almost watched that one. I'm kind of glad I missed it. But I mean, we do love Bigfoot, so I was curious to check out a Bigfoot movie. But
oh God, yes, come with me.
All right, this is going to be my last contribution. So I watched a film that it says it was presented by Screambox. So this is a film called Subject. And this is another one. So this is going to come up a lot. If it already has come up in this feed, it's going to come up in later episodes. But you know, one thing, I'm always down for a kind of found footage or something like that. But one thing that's becoming like super easy for people to do is to like shoot some footage and like kind of slap a filter on it and be like, what? It's a cell phone or it's a stream or it's a whatever. And it's like, I understand that it's budget friendly and that's why we're going to get a shit ton of them. But you also have to understand that this market is already so damn saturated. So this is one, it's essentially, you know, like a bottle episode type of story, like a chamber piece. It's one guy. He's at the very beginning, he is going to jail. We don't know why. And some organization comes and grabs him and takes him away. And essentially they put him in a different style prison where he is alone. He has a bedroom. It's got like a TV in there and that's pretty like a bathroom and stuff. And then there's another room where he goes in, it's connected, but the door only opens at a certain time. He goes in there and he's just supposed to do a video journal every day, but there's nothing for him to do really. So at first he's just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Well, in that journal room, it has a piece of like glass where you can see into another room he's never able to go into. And one day, this monster thing just shows up. Now, I will give credit. They actually pull off this monster thing well. So the problem is when you have a chamber piece or when you're just like in this central location, your acting has to be fantastic because that's all you're getting. And that's the problem with this movie is the acting stylings are not capable of carrying a film like this and this style. They're not terrible. They're just not good enough for a single man in a prison talking to a camera to carry it, which is a bummer because the monster actually is pretty creepy. And for the most part, they handle it very well, except there's this one scene where they get up, like it eventually starts like finding its way into his room, but he doesn't know if he's just losing his mind because he's in complete isolation. He's not able to talk to people and stuff. And so it kind of plays with those aspects. It also does some flashbacks where it's like home footage of how this guy got here, like why is he going to jail? So it shows like his family life and what he was dealing with before, which are not very good, honestly, those aspects. So yeah, I was like rooting for this kind of like monster film to kind of take off, and it had some good elements in it, but ultimately it just couldn't be carried by the acting here, and the premise was just too basic. They had like some good elements, they just couldn't like move that forward, unfortunately. It was super short though. I think it was only like 75 minutes or something. It was like super short.
Oh wow.
So
yeah.
So yeah, that
quite
was
a few of those actually. I was shocked how many. I'm shocked how many of the movies that I've seen this past week have been like on the shorter end, which is a great. I'm grateful for that change of pace.
The trend.
Me too. Yeah. Keep it tight, guys. Keep it tight.
Yeah.
All right, Bob. Speaking of keeping it tight, over to Bob.
Hi. I'm going to talk about two because they go hand in hand. So, the movies are called The Once and Future Smash, and the other one is called End Zone 2. So,
okay.
This is a bit confusing and convoluted. Whenever I finally understood what was happening, I was like pretty intrigued by the concept. So, The Once and Future Smash is what the filmmakers recommend you watch first. It is a faux documentary about two older men who are retired actors who both played the character of Smash Mouth in Zone 2, which is a slasher movie from the early 1970s. It's like a proto-slasher movie. And
so this is like a Town Who Dreaded Sundown type of scenario, almost?
Kind of. A little bit.
Like just a meta.
So the one they recommend is a documentary about actors who are in the film that they want you to watch second.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And so the documentary really focuses on these two guys going to a horror convention and tabling to try and drum up interest in the next installment coming out in the End Zone franchise that they're going to like make a triumphant return as like the slasher Smash Mouth in, but that is set in present day. So like it's going to be a sequel, 50 years after the fact or 45 years or whatever it is. So
Mutilator style.
Exactly. The documentary is very much a comedy, and these like two older guys don't get along with each other. And as it unfolds, you kind of understand more as to why that is. And the End Zone 2 movie is only an hour long because there's some lore behind it. The third act was on a reel of its own that is now lost to time. And you find out like why that is. And like one of these actors only played Smash Mouth on the third reel, and the other guy didn't ever want to share the title with him, so he like made it disappear. So it's like they have this like old rivalry from like way back in the 70s, and they just bicker and they're forced to share a table. One of the older guys is the gentleman from The Greasy Strangler. His name's like Mike Michelson or something like that. His name's, I don't know, escapes me. But he's one of the guys.
Oh,
he's super crotchety. And they have like a handler that's in this that like tries to keep the peace, and they're at like a legit horror convention. I forget which one. So there's like, people coming up to the table and they're, making small talk and whatnot. And it gets like pretty fucking wild towards the end. It's like, it starts off very grounded and ends not so grounded. And there is also, disclaimer here, just full grandpa dick in this.
Gonna skip that one.
So
that's
that.
That's the Greasy Strangler promise.
It's
staying consistent with his brand.
Man, it's actually, I think it's the other.
Oh, Mark
guy.
Patton's in it.
There's actually like a lot of like horror names.
Lloyd's
like,
in it.
Yeah. They do interviews of like actors and directors that like you would recognize from other movies, and they're all pretending like they've seen End Zone 2 and they love it, and it influenced their work and stuff like this. So it's
that's cool.
It's
that's a
meta.
cool like world to build.
I would watch those. Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah. The End Zone 2 movie is very much stylistically like from the 70s. They kind of go to great lengths to make it look that way. It is, they mention it in the documentary that it's like the first slasher ever to pass the Bechdel test, and like it's basically a cabin full of like teenage girls, and it is extremely dialogue heavy, and there's like very kind of minimal slasher stuff going on. So like I was like expecting this like kind of bombastic slasher, and it just is not that. It really isn't. You get like a little bit of blood and guts at the very end, but I mean the first 50 minutes or so is really just dialogue for the most part. They do like a little seance thing. It didn't quite deliver what I think the documentary set up for my expectations, really, but it was fine. It was all right. Interesting concept, though, for sure. They went deep. They went real deep in the mythology. So, congrats for sure.
All right.
There you go. The Once and Future Smash and End Zone 2. Randeezy.
Well, all right.
What you got?
Let's see. What else do we have to talk about? Okay, there's one that I haven't. There's two that I haven't talked about. One is a movie called Stag, which is a movie about a woman who is sort of single and sort of like living on the bubble to some extent. I forget. I think she's a telemarketer, but she's clearly like drinking a lot and like kind of living a bad lifestyle in New York.
Sounds great
and
to
pretty
me.
lonely. Yeah, doesn't it? And she finds out that her old friend, who she has some sort of history with, negative history with, that we don't really find out about until later, is getting married. And so she reaches out, and they have a very awkward getting to know you again sort of conversation. And the lady getting married is like, well, why don't you come to my bachelorette party? We're having it in this beautiful old summer camp that's been converted to like, just fun campgrounds or like a, I don't know, like retreat sort of spot. My good friends own it, and they're having us come out there. So her and a bunch of other people that she has never met before get together with this to celebrate this woman who she has a troubled history with, but used to be very, very close friends. And it's extremely awkward and strange, and it slowly sort of like becomes something else. Something sinister is happening, but she's not a trustworthy narrator. There's a lot of like interpersonal drama. There's a lot of, I think, pretty funny humor in it. Like I think it gets by in its first maybe like half to 2/3, primarily almost on its ability to make me laugh. It made me chuckle quite a bit. But ultimately, it's like the horror elements to it are good, but maybe a little bit. Like I said, like I'm carried by the humor, so the horror elements are kind of underbaked a little bit, and I just don't know really what it totally amounts to. I think it's maybe it's just the story of what it is, like just people reconnecting with each other, finding out that you can trust people from your past, even when you have negative history with them, maybe more than people that you know more recently. I don't know. I'm a little bit tepid on it, but for the most part, I think that I liked it, and I think that the humor was a big part of that. I don't think that I think it was original enough in its approach, but its setting and sort of what it was doing was not necessarily that, like story-wise, it wasn't the most original. It was just portrayed with pretty believably ridiculous and silly characters to build off of. So I don't know. A little split on it, but ultimately I enjoyed it.
Sweet. Cool. Sweet deal. Juice, you didn't have any left. Okay.
I'm done.
All right. Yeah, I got a few more. So I watched a movie called The Third. It's basically a hangout movie. It's about this couple that take a vacation for the 4th of July, and they go out to this cabin, and one of their friends shows up and kind of crashes their couple's retreat. And they're hanging out, and it's like pretty cordial at first. And the other woman that had showed up, you come to find out that she lost her significant other. She passed away, and they eventually do sort of a seance, and you're not totally sure like how successful it was. And the movie just sort of like slowly unfolds as they're hanging out in this cabin. They do fireworks for the 4th of July. They eat shrooms. And it's just like a very like chill hangout type of movie. I hadn't really seen a movie like this in quite some time. definitely like leans into its characters, and for sure a low budget, like basically a single location type thing. I think it was pretty successful in what it was trying to do. If you're into just sort of, I don't know, hangout movies, you'll get a kick out of it, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, more of a comedy than anything else, for sure.
Hanging out with my family.
Having ourselves a party. The Third. Yeah. Rainey, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I had just the one more. Do you want to hit another one, since I think you've got like 3 left, don't you?
I have 2. I think we share this last one, though.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, then we'll do this one then. So my particular favorite from this festival, and one that I've actually, like, we've done a few write-ups for different movies, and we're going to have a couple more from this Chattanooga Film Festival. This is one that I released a write-up for. It's called American Meltdown, and this is one that I think won Best Picture of the Fest or something like that, like Best in Show.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I enjoyed this movie quite a lot. I think it stood out to me because it was let me start with the plot. I always try and skip over the plot. So the plot is basically this. A woman is living a very anxiety-ridden lifestyle. She is working as an interior designer at a place, and we open on her basically being like fired but not fired, basically told to go away for 3 months because they don't want to pay her benefits. And she's told that it's the union's fault for fighting for her to get benefits that she's not now going to get, and she has to survive for 3 months without pay. And then she goes home and finds her house has been broken into. So she's terrified, obviously. She lives alone. She's got this sort of like overlarge overlarge house in California that's sort of like, I don't know, it comes from a previous relationship that the man disappeared from. He was largely funding it, at least partially funding it, and now she's stuck with a major bill and she can't get out of it. So finally, police show up, and the landlord shows up, and the landlord's clearly gaming the police report in his favor to make sure that it's her fault because there's a missing key that just never existed and shit like that. It's very anxious. It's a very anxious movie. And then in her frustration, she winds up running into this drifter named Mari, who basically is like she, like, I don't know, like prototype of crust punk. She's like very much fits that aesthetic, I think. She's this person who lives out of a Sprinter van or something along those lines. And we find out later that she, escaped a pretty normal life. And her mantra is, do you enjoy your life? And what she does is she basically like pickpockets rich folks and steals things from grocery stores. And the whole thing becomes this sort of like push and pull of these two philosophies, one of which is like, okay, but if I play by the rules, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm getting the jobs I want to. I'm going to college. I'm doing all the things that you're supposed to do to succeed in America. And yet that's not working. So the other philosophy is, so what do? Do you just keep fighting, or do you burn it down, so to speak? Do you start from scratch? Do you disappear like Mari did from her life and just start somewhere new and just ignore all the mistakes of the past, because what else can you do? So I really love this movie. I love the way it works. It's magic throughout the fucking thing. It's like, it's tough to describe, but it is very dramatic and also very comedic, in very dark comedic ways, very grounded comedic ways, but dark comedic ways. The landlord character in particular is one of the funniest fucking characters I watched in this festival. He is the perfect slime ball. It's just so great to watch, like, the interactions they have. And ultimately there's a little bit of crime caper going on in the end. So I loved this movie. I thought it was definitely my favorite of the weekend, or of the festival rather. And I guess other people felt that way as well. Bob, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. That landlord character is such a hilarious piece of shit. I know, man. I think the
cop's not much better.
No, he's not. The movie is somewhat relatable for sure. Like in one aspect or another, I think a lot of people of our generation are going to get something out of this movie, and it is very funny too. At the same time, it's got some great performances from the two leads. They've got like a really good back and forth going on, and yeah, the comedy lands for me. It's pretty much overall successful. I'm right there with you as one of my favorites of the festival for sure.
Nice,
worth watching.
I gotta find that.
Watching.
Yeah, more of a comedy dramedy than a horror movie, but worth watching for sure.
Yeah, that's a nice balance. I think it was a directorial debut too, which is impressive as shit.
That's a good start. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
The last one on my list here is kind of similar in tone and theme, actually. It's called Sour Party, and this is about two friends living in Los Angeles, and they're trying to make it in the industry and struggling because it's very difficult to do so. They're a little bit younger than our characters in American Meltdown. They're broke as shit. They're just trying to get gigs where they can. Well, one of them is an actress. She was in one movie that she never got paid for, and the other girl, she finds out that her sister's having a baby shower, and she really wants to be able to buy a present for her sister, primarily because that's just like what is expected of her, and she wants her family to see her as like being okay, even though she's like basically destitute. So these two girls spend the movie driving around Los Angeles, trying to chase down money that is owed to them by previous bosses. They also try to they download this app that's like for sex work, and they do these videos to like try and drum up some money. And this probably sounds fairly grim. I'm describing it in a way that's more grim than it really is. The movie's hilarious. It's like consistently funny. It was cracking me up. There's like a brief cameo. Reggie Watts is in this. They try to sell stolen plants to Reggie Watts. They run into a cult. There's a brief Corey Feldman cameo in this.
Oh boy!
It reminded me.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
it reminded me of The Big Lebowski, because they're just like driving around LA all day, like running into different crazy ass people, getting into weird situations, trying to scrape some coin together. And it's funny. It's really, really funny as shit. I recommend watching it. It's got its humor is sort of like tailored more towards my tastes, and it's got like a youthful energy to it. It's good. Sour Party. I recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah. Some comedies to round it out.
I was going to say, we may have not led with this, but it's important to note that a lot of what we watched was not horror adjacent. Even it was very much not horror. So, and we feel pretty good about that. I think we're fine with that. So,
well, even like with the last movie ever made or whatever, it's I mean, that's definitely more feel good, and like it's but it still does have this kind of darkness though of your world's going to end, you're gonna die or whatever, and kind of like how you reconcile with that. So I mean,
straight dramas do too, though. I don't know, man. Like,
sure.
We're not. I'm just making the point that like if you're going into these, know that they're not all very
true.
I'd say about 11 of the 16 we just covered are horror, so 2/3. You know, most of them.
New Religion, Satan Wants You. Even Satan Wants You. I mean, it's not.
That's a documentary, but it's horror adjacent enough.
Horror,
Satanic Panic.
Like not all of these would be fits for our podcast. We're just saying something because we're very, very liberally minded in terms of what counts as horror for us in the podcast.
It's a loose genre. It's a big tent with a bunch of happy
big
clowns
fucking
underneath.
Tent.
It's not tight like Bob.
It's like my tent is tight.
Grow up!
Pitching a tight tent over here. So that's everything that we were able to watch for the Chattanooga Film Festival, celebrating its 10th year. Happy that they're back doing it in person. I think this is the first year they've been back in person since the pandemic. So yeah, congratulations to Chattanooga Film Festival, doing it for a decade.
Yeah, and also like a quick thank you to them for including us on this and allowing us to and participate from abroad. Hopefully one of these years we'll be able to attend in person and do it for the real thing.
Absolutely. Go nuts. I'm trying
Once we're touring, we're doing that straight chilling tour. We'll put Chattanooga, in the rotation.
With your Patreon dollars, you can fly us to Chattanooga, to Bukyan.
If you want to see us in Chattanooga next year,
if you
sign up today.
If you want to watch us smoke a huge joint with Reggie Watts, sign up now.
I'll sign up for that one.
Yeah. Sign up for the $100 tier, and then by next year, we can send one of us to Chattanooga.
One of us, yeah. One of us can go.
Just one. We'll fly Justin
Your favorite.
Your favorite. Justin, this ticket's going to bankrupt us, but we need you in Chattanooga now. Right.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Flying in the cream. Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Some of these will be available for you to watch very, very shortly, so keep your eyes peeled for it. And let us know if you have any other questions about any of the movies. We're happy to answer them. And cheers and congratulations to everybody at the Chattanooga Film Festival. And until next time, as always, everybody please keep chilling.